joining us at ThaiLawForum. Today we are joined by Professor Jane Kelsey, who is a Professor of Law at University of Auckland, and we are here to talk about the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Deal and Trump's decision to pull the US out of the partnership trade deal. Hello, Professor Jane Kelsey, how are you?
Very good to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. What do you think was behind Trump's decision when he decided to pull out of the trade deal?
Well, he had signalled clearly during the election campaign that that was his intention, but we need to see that it wasn't simply the dealings of Donald Trump. That's very easy to dismiss as the idiosyncrasies of an individual.
Yeah.
But if we think back, the reason why the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement was not yet in force was that President Obama did not have the numbers to get it through the US Congress. And that meant that it then became an issue during the election campaign where Bernie Sanders, who was very much on the left as the Democrat potential candidate, said that this was not a good deal, and that then forced Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump to make it central platforms of their own campaigns. So it's a much bigger picture than simply Donald Trump sending a letter saying he didn't like the deal.
Yeah. Do you think that he made the right decision?
I think he made the right decision, but not necessarily for the right reasons. I'm personally extremely concerned about the kind of policies that he might try to pursue in bilateral free trade agreements with the TPP parties or any other countries, because when he says that these deals have not favoured America to date, our view very clearly is that they've been driven by America in the interests of American corporations.
Yeah.
So that means that new deals are in fact likely to be a great deal worse. Of course, those of us who have constantly said that this TPP was not a good deal for our countries, or indeed for working people in the US, are very pleased that finally the rug has been pulled. But our governments are busy scurrying around trying to resurrect a version of the deal, which ironically they weren't too keen on during the negotiations themselves.
Will this pullout impact other countries in a big way?
Well, we're already seeing that the countries that were involved in these negotiations are planning to meet in the middle of March in Chile to work out what they do. There have been some who've been trying to actually resurrect the deal itself without the US, which is not legally possible. But they are looking at either individual deals between themselves or trying to develop a similar kind of deal amongst a number of them. Of course, this is simply about wanting to, having put so much political capital in there and being concerned that the momentum of these kinds of deals is falling over, to try to rescue them and get what we call the wobbly bicycle back upright. When some of us would like them to be actually thinking about a different kind of model that doesn't have the same problems and the same level of opposition.
Yeah.
It also raises issues for countries that aren't a part of this. Certainly for the ASEAN countries, some of which had been looking at potentially joining the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which would have been a disaster because they would have had to give a great deal more than the original countries had given to even get to the table. But some of them may be looking at the flow-on deals that are being discussed. And then, of course, the other big picture is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or the RCEP deal, which involves China, ASEAN, and a number of the TPP countries, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, as well as Korea and India. And so that now is, all eyes are on that to see how China and ASEAN in particular will deal with it. Those negotiations begin again in Kobe
a current trend of countries having a more nationalistic agenda and like prying away from a more globalist front. Is this in any way similar to Brexit, with Britain pulling out of Europe?
There are very similar dynamics that are occurring here. And I think what we're seeing is people being concerned about two phenomena. The first is that their ability to influence decisions is being taken away from them by agreements that vest power, sovereign decision-making in bodies that are outside their own national polities.
Yeah.
And that makes people feel disempowered, and so the sovereignty arguments are certainly a part of it. Another part, though, is that the focus of these deals since the 1980s, during the neoliberal era, have been very much on what is in the interests of capital. What is in the interest of corporations, of removing restrictions from capital, very unbalanced deals, so that the social dimensions and the equity and distributive impacts have not been addressed. And I think those are the chickens that we're now seeing come home to roost. That is very much the message behind Brexit, very much the message during the US election, including those who voted for Trump.
According to a recent report by Al Jazeera, they said that Malcolm Turnbull, he refuses to believe that the decision the US made is final, and he's hoping that the US is going to change its mind. Do you think that'll happen?
My understanding from Australia is that he's now backtracked on that, partly because it's not sure whether, in fact, the TPPA, even with the US in it, was going to get through the Australian political system. They have two houses of parliament there, and the Senate is currently considering the agreement. Its report is about to be handed down, and the government does not control the Senate. And it's quite possible that they, in fact, would not have had the political support for the deal. He has now conceded that he won't be trying to push through the legislation for the old Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and is looking at other kinds of dynamics.
Okay.
The one political leader who is still trying to change Trump's mind is Prime Minister Abe from Japan.
Yeah.
And they are about to meet. They have a bilateral meeting shortly, and I suspect that not only will he be told, probably in as blunt terms as the conversation between President Trump and Prime Minister Turnbull from Australia, that the TPPA is dead, but at the same time the US is keen to negotiate a bilateral deal with Japan, but where Japan gives a great deal more than it gave in the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. So we have to see whether Japan is going to surrender to those demands.
Okay. What is the next step? Like, what is the US's next step, or Australia's next step when it comes to this deal?
Well, the US appears to be focused principally on NAFTA, the North America Free Trade Agreement between Canada, the US and Mexico, which is not only physically and geopolitically the closest, but is very important in economic terms, and is probably the best known of the agreements amongst the American constituency. But he has said that he wants to start negotiating bilateral deals with a number of the parties to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement with whom the US does not have deals, including my own country, New Zealand. We will be trying to make sure that doesn't happen, because it will be worse for us even than the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement was, and some of us really wish we didn't have to fight that battle. But as I mentioned, a number of the other countries from the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement are going to be meeting in Chile, I think on the 14th and 15th March, and they will be discussing there what their next steps are amongst themselves. I think those will be quite high-level discussions, but we may see coming out of that a number of proposals to have negotiations. But before that, we will have the ASEC negotiations in Japan, and people will be watching very closely what China and India and the ASEAN countries do now that the pressure of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, which was seen very much as a competitor at RCEP, was designed to try to neutralise that from the China and ASEAN viewpoint. What will happen to that now that that pressure is no longer there?
Okay, so my last question is, does this in any way affect Thailand, since we are a Thailand-based group?
It most certainly affects Thailand, and I've been up in Bangkok several times late last year when the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement was still on the table, and when there was a lot of discussion about what the consequences for Thailand might be of trying to join. As I mentioned, any country that wasn't part of the original groups would actually have had to pay much more to get into the club than the existing members. But I know that there were real concerns in the health sector about the implications for policies such as tobacco and alcohol control, but also medicines. There were also concerns that Thailand has been looking at trying to move out from the rights of foreign investors to sue under investor-state dispute settlement, and it would have been locked into that through the TPP. And so I would hope that having had this close shave with the TPP, that there will be some space for rethinking whether that model is good for Thailand, and undoubtedly Thailand is having those discussions as part of ASEAN and the RCEP as well. So I think the debates that have been happening in Thailand need to continue, and community groups and lawyers and others who are concerned about this old model that is being rejected in many places need to engage with that debate about what alternatives might look like.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor. We're now finished with Professor, and we heard her thoughts on the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Deal. I'm Georgina Dunn for Thai Law Forum.